Thank you.
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales
and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio. And online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness,
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Now, another day, another Health Secretary, another strategy for the NHS. This time, the strategy for patients, A, B, C, D, ambulance, backlogs, care, doctors and dentists. Are you convinced this one will fix the woes? I personally would have had P and R, personal responsibility. That might help fix some of the NHS's troubles, mightn't it? And also, yes, we don't have to pay the planned national insurance rise. Brilliant. How are we going to fund social care then? Because that is a million-dollar question, and one that no one really seems to have a proper, long-lasting answer for. Do you? If so, tell me. And the world is more anxious than ever. Are you? How do we deal with it then? Well, over in the States, an expert panel has the answer, folks. Apparently, screen the under-65s for anxiety disorders. You see, I don't really get this. Personally speaking, why don't we just start teaching things like resilience? Am I, missing something? You tell me. And should a company be able to refuse to provide you services, basically because they don't like some of your views? I say definitely not. But what says you? Tell me, and we'll have all that to come. But first, let's get ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest news headlines.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. The Foreign Secretary has described Russia's attack on Ukraine as an attack on the world. James Cleverly made the comments at the United Nations Security Council. He also called on countries to reject the charade of referenda due to be held in Russian-controlled regions, saying Putin's planning to fabricate the results to annex Ukrainian territory.
We stand with our Ukrainian friends for as long as it takes, because Ukraine's fight for freedom is the world's fight for freedom. It is our fight for freedom. And if Ukraine's sovereignty and territory are not respected, then no country is truly secure.
The Chancellor has announced the rise in national insurance, implemented under Boris Johnson, will be cancelled later this year. The increase of 1.25%, which came into force in April, will be reversed this November. In a tweet, Kwasi Kwarteng called the measure a tax cut for workers and would allow for businesses to reinvest. The Bank of England has raised the interest rate by 0.5 percentage point to 2.25% as it seeks to curb soaring inflation. The central bank expects a 0.1% fall in GDP over the current quarter, indicating it believes the country is already in a recession. The government's unveiled a £500 million fund for NHS winter care, with plans to improve access to GPs. Under the reforms, Health Secretary Therese Coffey has pledged patients with urgent needs will be able to see a GP on the same day. Those who want to book non-urgent appointments will be seen by a doctor within 2 weeks. Other medical workers, such as pharmacists and advanced nurse practitioners, will also be used to help ease the workloads. Ms Coffey says her focus is on patients.
I'm standing up here for patients. I'm focused on my ABCD because that's what most people experience. Getting access to a doctor, getting access to a dentist, having an ambulance turn up on time rather than be stuck in terms of being stuck outside a hospital. Those are the things that matter when people need care the most.
The government has lifted a ban on fracking in England in a bid to provide what it's calling energy security for the UK. Fracking is a way of mining gas and oil from shale rock, which experts warn could cause earthquakes. Unveiling the measures, Business Secretary Jacob Rees-Mogg said the government needs to pursue all avenues to provide domestic energy supply. The RMT union has announced further rail strikes for next month. Over 40,000 workers from Network Rail and 15 train companies will strike on the 8th of October. It's part of a long-running dispute over jobs, pay and working conditions. Strikes are already set to go ahead on the 1st and the 5th of October. A 16-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder in connection with the death of a 15-year-old boy who was stabbed in Huddersfield yesterday. An investigation has been launched after the teenager died in hospital following an attack close to the entrance of North Huddersfield Trust School. The head teacher says they've lost a wonderful student from their school community. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Tatiana. Well, I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight, and keeping me company is my panel, Charlotte Pickles, the director of the Reform think tank, and a former advisor to Ian Duncan Smith, and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Good evening, ladies. Nice to see you both again. And you know the drill, don't you, on Dewbs & Co? It's not just about us three here. It's about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch with me. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email, or you can tweet me at gbnews. Right, the NHS, it makes me groan, and I'll tell you why it makes me groan, because we seem to have a different strategy, don't we? It feels to me every day, and it's not every day, obviously, but it feels like that all the time. There's all these new strategies all the time, things we're going to do differently to get ourselves ready for, you know, that thing that creeps up on us, that unexpected thing called winter. You know, that thing that happens every single year that somehow people in the NHS don't seem able to predict or plan for or be prepared for. Anyway, we're approaching winter again. We've got problems and we've got another strategy. A, B, C, D. I laugh because it's just almost ridiculous now, isn't it? A, B, C, D, ambulances, backlogs, care, doctors and dentists, the NHS, the national insurance rise that was going to go towards things like social care, that is no longer. The plan this time is if you want to go see your GP on the same day, you'll be able to. We go round and round in circles. I'm going to come to you first, Scarlett. Is this A, B, C, D plan the one? Is it going to fix it? Have we cracked it?
It's not. What I don't understand is the money, right? So Therese Coffey, our new health secretary, says quite rightly she's going to put £500 million into getting people out of hospital into care homes. Absolutely right. I mean, this is an absolute basic for what you need. There's going to be an awful lot of money needed for all the rest. And we've just cut all the money that was promised to go to the NHS, or have we? We've certainly cut the taxes that were going to be raised for it. So I'm in a quandary. I mean, I do think that getting people out of care homes is absolutely essential. Getting people into care homes, out of hospital, into their own homes, if possible, with people looking after them, that is fantastic. But it costs an awful lot of money. And meanwhile, I mean, you know, the county councils, who are mostly Tory, are saying we haven't got the money to do this, and this was before they knew about her plans. So the problem is that the NHS, as we know, takes up more and more, and we need to do it properly. Meanwhile, care homes, 135,000 staff missing because they'd rather go and work in Lidl, where they get better wages and free food.
Yeah, but hang on a minute though, because it's not just about going to work in Lidl. I remember I campaigned for it on this programme actually to stop the ridiculousness. The vaccine mandates, you remember? We disagreed with those at the time. We disagreed with each other, should I say, on them. You know, the care sector lost an awful lot of staff because it made people have these COVID vaccines or else lose your job. And a lot of people say, well, I'll lose my job then. So you've got a staff shortage for a variety of reasons, haven't you, in the care sector? And for some reason, we don't value carers. Why not?
I don't know.
Why don't we value our carers in this country? It baffles me. It really does. A, B, C, D. Have we fixed it?
Yeah, sure. We've just come up with another acronym. Everything's fine. No, sadly, we haven't. I mean, it is probably worth saying, to give the new Health Secretary her dues, of course it's right to try and tackle the backlog. Of course it's right to try and make sure that people can actually get a timely health appointment. Of course it's right to try and make sure there are more NHS dentists available to people. But there's no real plan for how the government's going to do this. We've just heard it's going to take quite a lot of money. Actually, even if you poured even more money into the NHS, and as Scarlett already pointed out, the NHS is taking an increasing share of public spending, which incidentally means we're spending less on the sorts of service that might improve people's health and stop them ending up in a hospital. Things like education and skills and green spaces and clean air and all the good stuff that actually makes us healthier in the first place. But actually there aren't the staff, and it is care home workers, but it's also GPs. We've got massive vacancies in the health service, GPs, doctors, nurses. So I think it's right the government are trying to do something, but I don't think it's sufficient. But actually, I think the bigger problem is we're just not having the sort of conversation we need that's going to generate the ideas that's going to save the NHS. And that may sound very grand, but if you look at it now, we have never spent more as a proportion of our public spending than we do now on the NHS, and yet our outcomes are really pretty poor. You look at infant mortality, you look at whether you're likely to survive certain cancers like lung cancer or breast cancer. You look at actually, can our healthcare system prevent you from dying, i.e. can it save you from your illness leading to death? And we score really badly in international tables, really badly. And of course, we all know the population health is deteriorating. I mean, you made the point, Michelle, right at the start. What's the role of personal responsibility? You know, obesity is driving more and more cost in the system. We actually at Reform published a letter today in the Times, which was we got 10 former health and care ministers from Labour, Conservative and the Liberal Democrats, 10 former people who've been part of running the NHS, who came together in a letter today that we published saying the current model is not fit for purpose and we have to have an urgent rethink about how we deliver healthcare in this country.
Well, you two are former advisors as well, and I've got a good idea, if I say so myself. What I think needs to happen with the NHS, and by the way, I just want to make a point here. I'm not criticising frontline, people like nurses, doctors, all the rest of it, because I know it's quite demoralising. My mum and sister are both NHS nurses, and I know how hard everybody works. So when I criticise the NHS, I'm not aiming it at those frontline, hard-working doctors, nurses, porters, all the rest of it. I'm aiming it more at the systems, the policies, the structures, all those kind of things, the strategies. So what I would do with the NHS, and if anyone wants to, if Theresa Coffey wants to listen to me and steal my idea, she can, as long as she credits me. Right, you pick it up. There are some things in life that are too big for the politics of the day, right? So one of them, I'll keep it to the NHS. To me, the National Health Service, it's too big to be kicked around and flip-flopped around based on the politicians or the government of the day, right? So I'd extract it away from the remit of today's Prime Minister and today's Tory party. I'd extract it out. I'd say, right, I'm going to have a 3-month planning process. I'd bring together different political parties, different experts. I use the word loosely when I say experts, but all these different stakeholder groups, you bring them all together and you'd reimagine what should the future National Health Service look like. If we were building it today, what would we build? How would it look? How would it run? How would it be funded? Then I'd come up with, I don't know, say a 20 or 30-year strategy. You two are looking at me like I'm bonkers.
No.
I'd come up with a 20 or 30-year strategy that sits outside the remit of the politicians and the Prime Minister of the day, and it's not affected by people desperately trying to get re-elected and making all kinds of promises and broken promises and platitudes just to get them elected. What do you think?
No, look, I think it's a good idea that will never happen, right? Because
Why?
Because the minute you put it outside, right. What you're saying is that these people will say, OK, so this is how we'll do it, and then the politicians have to nod to yes. To have something, I mean, the civil service is supposed to be outside
but the politicians
politics.
so there's a cross-party group in my team. So they're going to come with me. And
They are. But the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary of the day will go, yes, that's all right, and we'll cherry pick this, and this. Look, we have had so many reorganisations. I mean, the last one, David Cameron got in, promised there would be no reorganisation, had the Lansley reorganisation within a year. It has been a total disaster. So it really sounds great, but actually, there's lots of things that can be done. I mean, one of the things, what you were talking about, early diagnostics, right? It is shocking that in Europe, which spends less on their health services with better outcomes, they have much, much more early diagnostics. So you're getting people at a much earlier stage. If you're treating grade 3 or 4 cancer, you are talking masses of money. If you're talking grade 1 or 2, it's over. It's easy. And there's masses and masses of things that we could do in the NHS, actually, that would make outcomes better.
Where do you stand? I think we need root and branch reform. Not tinkering, not ABCDs. Start all over again with your thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason I'm smiling, Michelle, is because that letter I mentioned that we'd put together from the former health ministers today was launching a new programme we are doing, which is called Reimagining Health. So you said we need to reimagine health.
Do you want me to come and consult?
I would love you to.
I'll do a special rate.
And we're literally doing what you've just described. We're saying, do you know what? We've got to stop having a conversation about how do we tweak the current system? Can we put a bit more money here? Can we change the name of this unit here? Can we change the structure or what sits where? Which is, when we say we've done big reorganisations, we have, but we've done it within the current system. We haven't actually asked ourselves what Michelle is asking, which is, but maybe the system itself isn't fit for purpose. Maybe we need to take a step back and say, let's think about the health challenges we currently have today, because let's remember that the model we have, the NHS we have, inspiring and brilliant as it was in the late 1940s, is largely still the same. And are we seriously saying that the challenges of the 1940s are the same as the challenges that we have today? Of course they're not, which is why we do need to do exactly what you're saying, which is to take a step back, to really reimagine what the system should look like, to build a cross-party consensus in doing that, and temporarily, I would say, take the politics out. And the reason I say temporarily is because I'm a big believer in electoral mandates and democracy and the fact that the people should have a set of leaders they can hold to account for the services that they're paying their taxes for. So I think you need to take it out, but then I think you do need to, once you've decided what that model looks like and you've got the consensus to bring it in over that sort of 20, 30-year period, then I think you do need to reintroduce the accountability that politicians give to it.
Yeah, because to me, it's all about what happens is, how can I get myself elected? And I think it's so wrong that what the NHS becomes, and it's been like this for a long time, it's a political football that people comment upon in order to secure themselves a job going forward, right? So what can I say to everyone in order to get elected? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll say a penny in the pound more goes to the NHS. yeah, you know, a penny in the pound, and I'll give you this, and I'll give you that, and I'll give you that. No, you weren't. Why would you stick a penny in the pound into a bucket with holes all over it? Why would you do that? You wouldn't, or you shouldn't. Well, you would actually, but you shouldn't. And I find it quite infuriating. And I think there's too much waste. I think there's too much duplication in some of the things. You hear all these stories about you can only have blinds from this particular contractor, or you've got to have 3 people to do light bulbs or whatever it is. And I'm being a bit facetious, but there's huge amounts of waste. You could do better with technology.
Which they're trying to. I mean, it's quite interesting that if, as I have done, I've been with 2 hospitals, and watching the technology at University College London is incredible. I mean, you just give in your name, they have everything about you. It's all on there. You go for a blood test, you give you give your number, and it's done. I mean, they are moving, and then you go to a hospital outside and basically it's still pen and paper. I mean, the problem is there isn't an NHS. That's the problem. It's not national, right? And you do need to make it national, and you need to stop having all these sort of trusts competing.
I don't think you need to. No, I think the worst thing you could possibly do would be to make it even more centralised than it is now. Whenever, that part of the challenge, so you're absolutely right, we don't have a national health service in the sense that each individual trust, so either a hospital or a group of hospitals, each individual GP surgery, which incidentally are largely private sector entities that nobody ever talks about the fact they're private sector, they are all run independently, essentially. But everything is coming down from the centre, where you've got thousands of people sitting in the Department for Health and Social Care or NHS England or the various merged bodies that they're constantly changing in the centre. Thousands of people sitting there writing rules for each of these entities. And actually, how could you possibly sit in Westminster and know what the health needs are in Hull versus, I don't know, Tower Hamlets versus Maidstone or wherever it is, and you're going to sit there and tell each area what they should be doing? I think part of the problem is actually we haven't devolved the NHS and health services nearly enough. And if you could do that and you could give local, and I'm not, saying local government are in the best place, but if you could build them up and strengthen them, actually, given local government has social care, which we've just talked about, and it's not $1 million question, it's a multi-billion-dollar question of solving social care. They also have most of those health-creating services, so they're responsible for a lot of the things that actually, in a local community, is what keep people fit, healthy, delivering mental health, all that kind of stuff. Actually, I think we need to be thinking not about this massive, bureaucratic behemoth of an organisation, but actually trying to say what locally do people need for their health.
And I think, actually, to be fair, I think they keep trying to go there, and then the centre... whenever anybody talks about devolution, right, is they talk about it, and then as soon as it gets there, they don't.
Because no one wants to let go, right?
Whatever politician, absolutely. And when I was saying about the national, what I was thinking is, a national IT system, and then it'll all go wrong. I mean, that's the problem. You say
which they
IT
did, and it all went wrong.
Absolutely, and it was appalling. But it is, you just think that there's so much cross... people go to different hospitals and different things, and you just need to be able to get hold of everything. And that's part of the waste. The duplication is because everything has to be done 3 or 4 times to get it all. And the problem with devolving is, are they, the national goes, but are they good enough? And that's.
I might pose the question though: is the national good enough now? So, given the fact we have 6.8 million people on waiting lists, given you can't get a GP point, So I'll give you I've had 2 experiences today actually on this exact subject, and you shouldn't really use anecdotes, but I'm going to anyway. So I needed to go to my doctor's surgery this morning just to get a routine blood pressure test. You go to that machine, you get a little coin, you put it in, you stick your arm, you have your... When I was in, there was a lady in front of me, as soon as they opened at 8 a.m, elderly lady, who said to the receptionist, I came in on Tuesday and I filled out a form because I was going to be running out of my medicine within 2 days. And I was promised I would get a call, and I left my number and I haven't had one. And the receptionist couldn't find any of the details of this. And the lady said, if I don't take my medicine, I'm at risk of having a stroke. And do you know why they hadn't solved it? Because apparently the receptionist who'd taken the form had then gone on annual leave and the form hadn't been submitted to a doctor. My other experience walking back then to my flat, there was an elderly lady I've never had this before, who'd tripped over and fallen straight flat on her face on the pavement. And she'd got blood and she thought she might have dislocated her shoulder. And, so another lady called 999 to get an ambulance, and I was sitting trying to just calm this lady down, who was also in shock. And as we all know, because of our ABCDs, the person on the 999 call said, we can't tell you when there's going to be an ambulance. We've no idea. And this is an elderly lady in shock, possibly broken shoulder, lying face first on the pavement.
Awful.
And they can't tell. The NHS is not working. The way it's being delivered is not working for people. So we have to try something different.
We do. Radical reform,
Radical
ladies
reform.
and gentlemen. Radical
Hear,
reform.
hear.
Tell me your thoughts on some of that. So have you been one of the unfortunate souls, by the way, that have tried to get an ambulance or needed to get an ambulance recently? How did you get on with that? Let me know your thoughts generally as well on the NHS. What do you think needs to be done? gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email address. Now, as you all know, many important people are in the UN summit in New York as we speak. Not least our very own Darren McCaffrey, by the way, our political editor. He has been speaking to the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly. Let's have a listen to what they have been saying.
It was quite clear he didn't want to hear what the international community was saying. And what we were saying is that back in February, when I was last here, Vladimir Putin said there was not going to be an invasion, and we now know he lied. And what we were saying is that we have information, which means that we know that the Russians are seeking to hold sham referenda to annex parts of Ukraine's sovereign territory and to then use that as justification for bringing more troops into this conflict. And what we are saying today is we see what they are doing, we are going to call it out, and we are going to reject it. He didn't want to hear it, and that's why he left the chamber.
Consider that we're at the United Nations, we're at the Security Council. Pretty impotent, all of this, though, isn't it, really? It is just words from the UN, in the sense that Russia's got a veto, China supports Russia.
Well, what we saw is condemnation right across the board. What we saw is the international community recognising who the aggressor is and recognising the importance of countries being able to defend their own sovereign territory. These are foundation stone principles of the United Nations. And what we also saw is that Russia is getting no succour, it's getting no support, it's getting condemnation. And that will have an effect. And increasingly, Russian people will see through this call for mass mobilization that the invasion of Ukraine by Russia is not succeeding. And what we also saw across the world is people wanting to resolve this, but wanting to resolve it in a way that gives Ukraine back to the Ukrainian people.
What would you say, though, to the viewers watching who think, there's a possible nuclear war in all of this, there's an energy crisis, we can't afford it, we should just do a deal with Russia, it's the best interest for Britain to do a deal? How do you convince them that they might be wrong?
If the message that we send around the globe to anyone who is watching, every potential aggressor, if the message that we send is that we are not determined enough, that we don't have the strategic endurance to see these things through, then the world becomes a less safe place. And other people will seek to steal territory from their neighbours, and that will have a knock-on effect for energy prices, food prices, and our security. So we have to do this until it is done, and that means when the Ukrainians have got their country back and when the Russian forces have left Ukrainian soil.
Okay, two final questions, if I may. Just first of all, on Israel and the potential moving of the embassy. Britain in, 2018, 2019 was one of 128 countries that condemned Donald Trump when he did this. But what's changed?
Well, what the Prime Minister said is we will look at the locations of our embassies, including in Israel. There's no decision that's been made. What we have seen is that the relationship between Israel and a number of the Arab states in the region has improved enormously. They enjoy now diplomatic relations with a number of Arab states. Of course, we want to look at what can be done to encourage peace between the Israelis and the Palestinian people and the wider Arab world. So we will always pursue a course of action that we believe will increase peace and security in the region. And as I say, there's no decisions been made, but we always will look with an open mind at what things we could do to help promote peace and security in the region.
And just very finally, Foreign Secretary, on Brexit and the Northern Ireland Protocol, frankly, we're pretty boxed in all of this, aren't we? We know the United States thinks it's a really important issue. The the protocol. They do not want unilateral action. The EU has said there will be consequences if we take unilateral action. We're potentially facing a recession. We cannot afford to take unilateral action when it comes to the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Actually, in the discussions that I've had with our European friends and neighbours, including with Ireland and the United States of America, what they all want is they want the Good Friday Agreement to work. They want peace in Northern Ireland. What they want is free-flowing trade between Ireland and Northern Ireland and between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. This is what we all want, and I have detected a real determination to work collectively and collaboratively to get that resolved. The Northern Ireland Protocol Bill is our safety net. We have to have a legal framework to move forward, but ultimately what we have said, both privately and publicly, is our preferred option is a negotiated settlement. And I think all the parties, including the US, will work in good faith to try and get that as a resolution. That's what we're working towards, and I think we're all on the same page on that.
Well, there you go. What did you make of what our Foreign Secretary has to say? Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. Tell me your thoughts on what you've just heard. Now, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'll have some of your responses on that NHS topic. Lots of you getting in touch with lots of your ideas there about how to fix things. And I'm wondering, are we all just a little bit too stressed? Apparently, our levels of anxiety are going up and up. And thank goodness for expert panels, because they have got the answer, one of them at least. Over in America, they're saying now perhaps everyone under the age of 65 should be screened for anxiety disorders. Really? Sounds pretty ludicrous if you ask me. But what do you say? Tell me, and I'll see you after the break.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales
and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping me company until 7 o'clock this evening. My panel, Charlotte Pickles, who's the director of the Reform think tank and a former advisor to Ian Duncan-Smith, and the former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Graham has been in touch saying, Michelle, can Charlotte finish a story? What happened to that lady?
Bless her, I had to leave. So there
You
was,
left her?
I know. Not a bad person.
Oh.
I had to go to an event I was speaking at, and there was 3 other ladies there with me who said they were fine and they would wait. So I don't know, but as I say,
how long had you waited by the time you left?
She had only just fallen when I arrived, and another woman was on the phone to the ambulance, to 999. And must have been on the phone about 10 minutes trying to say, I don't know who this lady is, I've never met her, like, we're in the street by the tube station. She's sort of making sense, but not really. There's blood, etc. So
the short version is, Graham, we don't know.
We don't know, but we hope she is fine.
If you are the lady that fell face first, and old Charlotte here just wandered off and went about her business, get in touch with me. Tell me how your story ended, please. Lots of you, I have to say, they're getting in touch about the NHS. What is the answer to it? Ruth says, Michelle, the NHS as we know it has run its course. Simple as that. Someone else says, never mind A, B, C, D, we just need R for reform. Many people are getting in touch saying one of the problems, Michelle, is agency staff and agency costs. They're saying agency doctors, nurses, locums, etc. They cost a small fortune. Yes, they do. And I'll tell you who else makes a small fortune out of it as well. The agencies, the recruitment companies, they put this cap on, the maximum cap of commission that the NHS should have to pay these agencies. And I know people that run these agencies, or at least a few of these agencies, and they would have done it for a fraction of the commission. So better negotiation wouldn't go amiss on some of these things either. John says, Michelle, look at the rates of obesity in this country. If you compare it, for example, he says, going back to places like the 60s, it is got an out of control. It's a drain on the NHS, he says, and people are irresponsible. I've got to say, John, often people are obese for different reasons. Sometimes it could be medication or something like that. But in the event where it's pure lifestyle choices, i.e. diet choices and lack of exercise, then I completely agree with you, actually. I think it is irresponsible, and people should value themselves better. Value your health, value your body. You only have one. Someone else says, and I can't, is it Siobhan? Is that how you pronounce your name? You say you're a registered nurse and you got fired because you didn't get vaccinated. Shameful. I campaigned actually against those vaccine mandates. I thought they were appalling at the time. I still think they're appalling now, and I still think that they are one of the contributing reasons why we have a staff shortage. But I also know that many of you will disagree with me. Anyway, let's talk anxiety. Why not, eh? I love to be nice and upbeat on Dewbs and Co, so I do. Anxiety levels are on the rise, not least, of course, because of COVID. Get this. Apparently, the number of people suffering from mental illness jumped significantly over the course of the pandemic. You don't say. 53.2 million cases of major depressive disorder and 76.2 million cases of anxiety disorder across the world, apparently, linked to the COVID pandemic. Well, what we're going to do about it? There's an expert panel in America that reckons that what we should do is screen everyone under the age of 65 for anxiety and depression. I've got some very strong views about this, but you tell me what you think, Charlotte.
I've got this sort of awful vision of us all having to kind of queue up in some sort of dystopian world and go through some scanner or something to see if we're kind of anxious or not. But I actually think there's quite a serious note in here. So if you read what the expert panel are saying in terms of how you might do it, one of the things they're saying is if you go to your, I don't know what they call them in America, but essentially your GP, your doctor, they should be thinking about your mental health and not just your physical health. So if you we know that a lot of people who go to see their doctor show up with a kind of, a physical ailment, but actually there's something about their mental health that would be worth them exploring and helping them with. So I think there is a sort of element of at least a kernel of an idea about making sure that we talk about mental health in the same way as we do physical health. But I think we all know that the pandemic exacerbated poor mental health in particular, and I think the thing we really still need to keep the conversation going on is amongst children and young people. So we know the devastating impact that closing schools had, both on young people's development and welfare, but particularly on mental health. So the number of young people with a probable mental health illness or condition jumped from 1 in 9 to 1 in 6 of our young people. I mean, that's astounding. And you mentioned at the start Michelle, about sort of emotional resilience. And, you know, we've had these conversations at various points. Nicky Morgan, when she was Secretary of State for Education, talks about the need for character education, and that kind of term gets sort of negative or positive connotations. But really what she was talking about is how do we help young people to be more emotionally resilient, to deal with, because what is anxiety? It's a fear of uncertainty, essentially. It's a fear of kind of, you know, being slightly out of control or not knowing exactly what's going to happen.
Well, I think anxiety is a normal emotion.
It absolutely is. But so it's a normal emotion until it becomes something which means it's impacting on your ability to live your day-to-day life. And for some young people, that means that, you know, they can't sleep. Or, well, for adults, for anyone, it means they can't sleep properly. Maybe they can't go to work. Anxiety and depression are huge drivers of sickness absence for businesses, having a massive productivity impact in the country. So, yes, it is normal
also
until it
there's a lot
gets
of people that use mental health as a way of pulling a fast one to get time off work, because they know if they say to their boss, I'm struggling with my mental health, it's almost impossible to prove if that's true or not. And you're on a sticky wicket as an employer if you start kind of going, are you really? You can't really have those conversations. So, yes, it's a massive mental health, is a massive impact on productivity, but sometimes I think it's also abused as well.
I mean, I'm sure, like anything, there is a degree of abuse, right? There's always going to be. But I think there's genuinely, I'm not going to say an epidemic of sort of anxiety and depression in the country, but there is a very large increase, which is becoming quite debilitating. And so you know, pulling a sickie on a random day, or, you know, getting a sick note for 2 weeks, because that's another thing that GPs will just sign you off for pretty much anything now. But actually, if you look at, for example, people who are on welfare, who are on benefits, and there are millions, an increasing proportion of those people are on benefits. So they've gone through an actual kind of assessment because of a mild to moderate mental health condition, anxiety or depression. That's costing the country billions, because we're not doing enough to help people to cope with everyday occurrences.
Let me bring you in. You're involved with a mental health charity as well, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm on the board of this thing. It works in the London Borough of Haringey. It's called Open Door, and it's for people under 24, although it's mostly under 18 because we don't get funding for the 18 to 24-year-olds. And what's so awful, I mean, I completely agree with you, is when I went onto the board, I started making an enormous fuss about waiting lists. I said it is unacceptable for a young person to wait 6 months. I mean, it's like a long part of their life. And we did a lot to bring the waiting list down, and they were, I think waiting lists are always too high, but they were okay. Yeah. Then COVID hit. Yeah. Up have gone the waiting list. I mean, it absolutely, so in anecdotal terms, it completely backs you. And what's so interesting about this charity is that although, as you would expect, there are more girls than boys, I mean, actually the demographics, the masses, there's lots of ethnic minorities, there's lots of working class. I always say, I mean, it's because the middle class people won't wait. I mean, if you've got money and you've got a child in trouble, then you're going to go off. But actually, I mean, I absolutely agree about that anxiety. But on the other hand, you talk about resilience. But if you look at what's happened, so after COVID, I mean, and now I'm back to adults, really, you know, you've got the whole summer, people on low incomes and not so low incomes were terrified, really terrified about this cap that's still going to come in. I mean, Gordon Brown today said that there would be 500 million more children in poverty because their parents are going to spend so much of the money on energy. So you've got that, and then, you know, you've got Putin sort of saying, well, we might nuke you. I mean, I think that we live in an age of anxiety. I mean, I don't think it's just a personal thing. And it's very difficult. And, you know, I have friends of mine. I mean, you're right. You go to the GP and you go, I'm not sleeping. And the GP should say, why? And you go, well, I wake up in the middle of the night really terrified. And of course, then it's going to lead to an anxiety disorder. But it's not about personal resilience. So I really do agree that it needs to be taught and it's really important. But actually, I mean, if you are really, really frightened about how you're going to keep the show on the road this winter, then, and you feel you're letting down your children, or should you be working more, and the whole thing, I mean, of course it's going to lead to anxiety.
But is that an illness? So if you're understandably worried about how you're going to provide for your children, and I get it, I understand that, I'm not disputing it, is that an illness? But I don't think it is.
But what Charlotte says, which is quite right, is it tips over into an illness. I mean, the problem is that what begins as something, I'm just worried, and I mean, one can see it in one's friends that as the worry tips over into something that is actually quite difficult to deal with, and then they get worried about everything. I mean, the people get, and it's quite interesting that it was said about the under 65s, because of course the problem with the over 65s is they do get increasingly anxious. I mean, I remember my mother, who was a very unanxious person, actually just got, as she got older, got increasingly anxious.
Yeah, tell me what you think about this at home. I'd be fascinated in your views, because I've become a mum and I'm more anxious now about the world because of the impacts on my son.
Yes.
But you see, I'm just cautious that sometimes I'm very aware of mental health ailments, and I've had my own, and I'm not undermining them in any stretch. I know how debilitating they can be. My concern is separate to that. My concern is this almost kind of this, it almost seems like the default reaction is, oh, you're anxious, oh, you've got an anxiety disorder. I tell you what, I've got a tablet for that as well. And you've got all these kids these days at school as well, and you can't do a sports day with a winner. You're all winners. You know, no, you're not. The first person is the winner, and the rest of you came second, third, and perhaps even last. And guess what? Nothing wrong with coming last. Just work a bit harder the next time. You might not come last next time. And when you start removing all that stuff from kids, I think you remove the resilience from them as well. Yeah. Anyway, tell me what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email address. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to have some of your thoughts. But I want to ask you this question. Do you think a company should be able to remove its services from you, basically because it doesn't agree with your opinions? I'm talking about PayPal, of course, that have been closing down accounts of people that dare to challenge some of the narratives that we are pushed. Tell me your answers to that, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, right through till 7 with my panel, Charlotte Pickles, who's a director of the Reform think tank and a former advisor to Ian Duncan-Smith, and a former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. We were just talking in the break then, following up that conversation about anxiety and mental health. The other thing that alarms me is the amount of people on antidepressants. I'm not criticising you if you are one. It just alarms me the ease in which these things seem to be dispensed. You know, your boyfriend's dumped you, you're a bit down, here you go, that's what you need. You've got depression, have some of these tablets, and on it goes. It does concern me, the ease and the vast scale of how prominent antidepressants are. They seem to be the first answer instead of a last resort. Tell me what you think about some of that. Right, have you seen this story about PayPal? Do you use PayPal? Well, you might have seen Toby Young. He was on the channel, I think yesterday it was. He's had his PayPal account basically closed down. He runs something called the Free Speech Union. There's another lady, actually, who's been on my show quite a few times, Molly Kinsley. She runs something called Us For Them, the group that campaigned to keep schools open, very nobly, I think, during lockdown. They've lost their account. And on it goes. This is not just two people. This seems to be spreading. And when PayPal's been asked as to what's going on, they're saying they don't take these decisions lightly, but they have very strong opinions on things like spreading misinformation about COVID vaccine and hate speech. Let's cut to the chase. Do you think, Scarlett, that an organisation such as PayPal should be able to say, I'm not going to let you use my services now because, basically, I don't agree with some of your views?
But this has always happened. I mean,
but do you think it should?
I think what I found difficult with PayPal is that I went onto their website and I could not find anywhere terms of use that what it was. I mean, and it's supposed to be hate speech, and I suppose that there is an argument about the things that Toby Young says about trans people, is that whether that is hate speech. OK, so if they say they're against hate speech and they're pro-lockdown, but I think they have to say it. But
are you
look,
listening to what you're saying? How can a payments company say, I'm pro-lockdown, and if you're not, I'm going to remove your ability to create financial transactions?
Because actually, if you've been on the left and you've been in campaigning organisations on the left, you are forever having difficulty having bank accounts because they don't agree with what you say. I mean, the National Abortion Campaign, right, which I was a member of for quite some time, I mean, it had real problems finding places where they could do home. This has always gone on, right? There's nothing new. The new thing is that it's happening to people that you approve of, right? But it's gone on for decades. That I mean, you know, W.H. Smith wouldn't have Private Eye because it thought it was disreputable. I mean, I just think that you have to, that if you're PayPal, if you're a bank, if you're whoever, that you have to say these are the terms and conditions on which you can come in, and these are the people we're not going to have. You have to be open about it, and that's the problem with PayPal is finding out what their terms are. I think the thing about, is it them for us for them?
Yeah.
Us for them is they appear to have kept the money, which is obviously absolutely wrong. They have to give the money back. But I think, I mean, everybody...
No, what they do is, PayPal say they've closed the ability to use the account, and then PayPal keep the money, I think it's for about 180 days, whilst they do an investigation or something, and then they will look to release it.
Right. But I think, I think everybody decides who they'll deal with and won't, right? But I think they have to be open about it.
Mm. What do you think?
I don't understand why they've closed the accounts. You know, are these organisations inciting hate? Are they doing something illegal? Are they, you know, providing obscene content or something? I mean, I'm a firm believer in free speech and freedom of expression, and I respect the fact that PayPal is a private company, and therefore actually it is legitimate, like any of us, to say, I don't want to spend my time with you, or I don't want to do business with you. I mean, you know, we could say, just because it's our personal preference, we don't want to do business with someone. But I think it's very dangerous going down this road. And, you know, whilst PayPal may be a private company, it's also quite a universal, you know, it's not a monopoly, but it is one of the biggest providers of payment platforms. And I think to turn around, and particularly Us For Them, which, I mean, as far as I can tell, is a sort of, you know, kind of a group of women who got together to say, we think closing schools has had a negative impact on children. I mean, what is the rationale between saying they're a dangerous...
a medal for some of the things
I completely agree. And you look at the evidence now of the impact on children, not just from education attainment, but from the welfare impact and mental health that we were talking about earlier. Absolutely, I think they did a great job of exposing what was a really bad decision in closing schools. But I don't see why. I can't. I genuinely am baffled. I don't understand what the rationale for PayPal.
I just think it's a slippery slope. I think when you start restricting people's access to their finances based on their views, I think it's a very slippery slope. And we saw this in Canada when you had the truckers' protest, you know, the whole COVID thing. And what happened there was this emergency act, basically. And if you donated to the cause of these truckers, so if you were saying, yeah, I agree with you, Bill, I don't know why I just come up with Bill as a trucker's name, but you know what I mean? I agree with you. You know, no vaccine mandates, here's £10 into your GoFundMe account. They were then freezing the bank accounts of the person making the donation. I think it's absolutely appalling.
Obviously, that was wrong. There was no question that that was wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got to have a universal thing where you say, you know, if you're providing financial services, you have to provide them to everybody, and it won't happen. I mean, there will always be people who you can find reasons not to. I mean, I'm assuming that Us for Them, once they do their investigation, they'll say there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
I don't like this whole, you know, we shall not criticise the, you know, the holy grail of the COVID response and reaction. We dare not question whether or not absolutely every single person pretty much on the land, healthy or not, should be given multiple vaccines. And if you do dare question it, woe betide you.
But hold on, Michelle, so that's wrong. But when I said the National Abortion Campaign, you know, that seemed to be much easier. What I'm saying is,
I didn't even comment on your national abortion.
Well,
I don't even know what it is.
Well, no, it's obviously it was a campaign to keep abortion legal, right? That I think.
Why would I disapprove of that?
I have absolutely no idea.
I wouldn't draw a line between whether it's left or right or this or that. You should have a principle that, whatever the organisation is, whether it's supporting legal abortion or it's arguing against ever closing schools again, of course you should enable them to have a way of, you know, banking or of course collecting finances.
Well, changing the subject dramatically, Mary's been in touch saying, Michelle, my son got a lot of help from the Open Door charity many years ago. They really did help him. Please, can you say to Scarlett, thank you so much. Good. There you go. See, these things do make a difference, don't they? Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I'm being cheated on, so I am. Got an issue with it. Lawrence Fox used to be on Dewbs & Co. He's sitting somewhere else tonight. What's he doing over there, Lawrence? And not over here?
I'm going to be with you again shortly, but I'm now Nigel's understudy for the next couple of weeks, and we'll be talking about channel crossings, the escalating sectarian violence in Leicester, and fracking.
Oh, sounds good. Well, are you nervous like the new boy on your first day?
Yes, I am. I've no idea what I'm doing. Be gentle on me.
Yeah, you'll be just fine. Well, we wish you luck and we'll be tuning in just a few minutes. Lots of you guys getting in touch. Cliff says, the word anxiety is just the new bad back. An excuse for the work shy. Oh, you're a little bit... actually, Phil said exactly the same sentence, pretty much. I've got to say, just to re-echo, I really do think anyone struggling with genuine mental health issues needs support. And we let those people down massively in this country, and there's no two ways about that. Anyway, that is all we've got time for. Ladies, thank you very much. What can I say? Over to the new boy, Lawrence Fox. He'll see you in just a couple of minutes. And I, by the way, I'm off. Yay, I'm off on holiday. So you won't be seeing me for a week. Have a good one.
Hi there, Aidan McGivern here with the latest weather from the Met Office. Rain clearing south during the next 24 hours with a few showers following, but actually for many, Friday's looking brighter compared with Thursday. A cold front has brought some wet weather to northern England and parts of Wales during Thursday. That's now making some progress southeastwards. Slow progress, but it is shifting. And as a result, clearing skies for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England through the evening. A few showers following for the north and west of Scotland and Northern Ireland, otherwise lengthy clear spells. But for the southern half of the UK, that's where the rain ends up. It turns more showery, but with a lot of cloud around, 13 or 14 Celsius, a mild start to Friday. Not so much the case for the northern half of the UK. Here, single figures and 1 or 2 fog patches first thing, especially for parts of northern England and southern Scotland. They'll get out of the way around mid-morning, and then sunny spells for much of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Showers developing fairly widely, I think, but the brighter skies do inch southwards into central parts of the UK. We keep the showery rain in the southeast, though, for much of the day. Some heavy bursts at times, and that'll make it feel much cooler than it's felt during the last few days. Temperatures 18 or 19 Celsius. Further heavy showers to come during Friday evening towards the southeast corner. And elsewhere there'll be 1 or 2 showers, primarily towards western coasts as well as the North Sea coast. Otherwise lengthy clear spells and temperatures dipping fairly widely into the single figures, perhaps mid-single figures in some sheltered spots. So certainly a fresh start to the weekend, but a bright start for most. There'll be plenty of sunshine through the day. Further showers will develop, especially around western as well as eastern coast, and 1 or 2 inland as well as the afternoon gets going. But it will stay fairly damp and cloudy in the far southeast through Saturday. That finally gets out of the way on Sunday, and then colder on Monday.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel,
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.